Hey guys, it's Vampire Mike from Sega CD Universe, back again after some technical difficulties with my buddy Rich from Arizona.
Hey, we're back, guys. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but I think we have a good connection now. I'm sitting in the backyard with some candles and flashlights, and if we have time after talking about Chrono Trigger, maybe I can tell you a ghost story or two. Tell you about the time I went to the Grand Canyon as a kid. Here's a spoiler: it does involve some diarrhea. But we'll see if we get to that story.
Um, Maybe we'll try and keep it to video games, but we'll see what happens. Um,
Oh yeah,
but
no,
Rich,
it's your show. It's your show.
Rich is very dedicated, as you can tell, because he's sitting in his backyard. Luckily, he's in Arizona, so it's warm, but he's using candles around him. I don't know why his backyard has a better connection than that room, but I would assume there's something in the room maybe causing some issue. I don't know, but that's weird. Um, so anyhow, that being said, we're here to talk about Chrono Trigger. We're going to start over just because we know the initial video was choppy. We did talk about Earthbound back in November, Rich, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the Thanksgiving weekend. We talked about Earthbound. Both one of my favorite games and one of yours as well. And now we
Yeah,
get to talk about the other one of our favorite games, Chrono Trigger. Came out in 1995, I'm pretty sure, in November or December. So I got it as a Christmas gift. I first saw an advertisement for it in GamePro magazine. So the ad got me intrigued. And then GamePro had a review and they gave it 5.0 across the board, which is their highest possible rating. So I asked for it for Christmas, got it, and spent my whole winter break from school playing that game. And it was a good time. One of the best Christmas presents I've ever gotten, for sure.
well, it's definitely, as we said earlier, this is one of the first games we both played with alternate endings. So it's definitely one of those games you can get your money's worth because even if you play through it once, you can always go through. And even though the game, I guess, would be the same, primarily the ending would be so different that it's, something new to do. You'll get your bang for your buck.
Yeah, so the way it works for those who haven't played is you have to complete the game all the way through normally, and then you have a feature called New Game Plus. And if you choose New Game Plus, you start the game from the beginning, but you have all of your power, items, levels, etc., that you did from your previous playthrough. So the first half of the game, at least, is pretty easy because you're so powered up. And the trick is you have the ability to go straight to the end boss, Lavos, and fight him at multiple different times. And depending on when you decide to go fight the end boss, that determines what alternate ending you get. And I believe there's at least 12 alternate endings to the game. I completed a few of them myself, and I forget. Did you say that you completed any of them or no?
No, I've always been like this. I know I mentioned this in the previous cast we just had a moment ago where we had the issue. Um, I'm the kind of person that I play through something once, and unless I can drastically play through the game differently, I usually only play it once. I know the endings were different, and as I said earlier, excuse me, this was actually one of the first times I've ever heard of, and maybe the last, where when you start the game, you can fight the last boss pretty much right away if you're ballsy enough, and if you, I guess, magically can beat it, you can beat the last boss like right away. But I don't think you can. Can you beat it right away?
I don't see how it's possible. Like if you're playing the game for the very first time, not New Game Plus, I don't see how that's possible. I mean, maybe there's some guy who was able to hack the game or whatever. If he's playing it on an emulator, maybe he can
Yeah,
do it that way. But to my knowledge, the very first time you play, there's no way you're powerful enough to do that.
yeah. I did want to mention that Rich was saying how he had gotten Chrono Trigger for Christmas and had a great like winter break playing it. The way I came across it was I wasn't the biggest RPG fan at the time because I didn't quite get the mechanics when I was a kid. So as I got older, I really wasn't into them. I was probably around 11 or 12. I went to my buddy Mike's house. He had all the RPGs. Was floored with Super Mario RPG. I thought that was really cool. The Nintendo style, the art, the gameplay, how it had some kind of like interaction. It wasn't just menu based text fighting. And then he popped in Chrono Trigger, and I was just like, wow, the music was awesome. Um, the graphics, I love that art style. And the game had a sort of creepy vibe for me, especially, and as I said earlier, in the Millennial Fair, where you're
Mhm.
going into the tent and you're talking to, can't think of his name, Doctor something, and that
It's
mask is like
it's like Norman Bexler or something like that.
Yeah, Doctor Norman Bexler, and
Yeah, that might be a Saved by the Bell character that I'm confusing. I don't know, but it's something like that.
no, I think you're right. You're thinking of Saved by the Bell guy. I can't think. Oh, I almost
Richard
had it. You're
Belzer?
thinking,
No,
yeah,
Mr.
Belding.
Belding.
Yeah, no, it's like Norman Bexler or something. But there's this mask, this little like mime or clown mask, and it goes what, and for some reason, like that scene and those kind of people, that area creeped me out as a kid. Um, I think the laugh was Kefka's laugh, and I know that there's a part in that tent when you go in where there's three characters that move around, and you have to sort of play the cup game and figure out which characters which once they move. And
Hmm.
those are the characters from Final Fantasy. I think they're in all of them, but they're originally from Star Wars, and then they put them in all the Final Fantasy games as like side characters.
Oh, I didn't know
Biggs,
that
Wedge,
it
and
originated from Star Wars.
Yeah, Biggs, Wedge, and Piety or something like
Vix,
that. I think their
like
names were.
Vix Wedge, and oh shoot, yeah, I know like that two of those names at least that they put them in all the SquareSoft games.
Yeah, so it was a Star Wars reference. I'm not a Star Wars guy at all, but I remember reading
Me
that
neither,
over the
man.
years.
Me neither. By the way, so Norman Bex is kind of like this. It's like just face and hands. I'm doing my little impression here. I can't
Yeah,
really do
yeah.
the Kefka laugh, but something like this. Well,
But he was creepier than Kefka for me. I don't know why. That like whole area was just sort of strange to me as a kid.
yeah, definitely. I love everything about the Millennial Fair. I mean, it kind of the closest thing that we could get to that is going to a Renaissance fair.
Yeah,
But I just like the idea of the booths, and they have that part where the four people keep racing each other in a circle, and you can bet on who wins the race. And each time
right.
it's a different person who wins. So that was a cool thing, and it's also where your main character runs into the cute blonde. You run into the princess. Never
Oh,
happened
yep.
to me when I went to a Renaissance fair. Maybe someday, but but yeah, I just remember that being a really cool part, early part of the game. Um,
Y- You're probably more likely to run into a chubby blonde at a Renaissance fair with her chest out eating a turkey leg, but you never know.
yeah, throwing a battle axe,
Yeah, right.
trying
Or
to win a
she is the
prize.
battle axe.
Exactly. Yeah, if you take her home.
But yeah. I mean, the game. I think if you were to take certain RPGs or certain games and say what stands the test of time, I think Chrono Trigger is way up there in terms of you can play it now, you played it back then, and it's still just frigging amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. If anytime you read a list of best 100 best games of all time, or whatever a magazine or a website puts out, I know in recent years Chrono Trigger has always been pretty high on the list. It's been number one on a couple of lists, and some people might read that and think, oh, it's overrated. It's getting nostalgia points, but I think even more true about Chrono Trigger. It's a legitimately great game, and it really does stand the test of time. I mean, yeah, you can knock it for the graphics, but it was from the 16-bit era, so it's kind of dumb to knock it
Right.
for that. Um, I mean, everything about it, from the graphics at the time to the soundtrack, which is phenomenal. I bought the CDs, the original soundtrack to that. I have it in my car. Um, the storyline, they didn't really reinvent the wheel with the storyline. It's sort of a typical SquareSoft RPG. Group of friends come together to save the world. Like, okay, but I thought that the whole uh, part about time travel, that was new for me. Um, and
Me as well, yeah.
as is usually the case with Squaresoft, they do a good job of developing the characters and making you care about them. Um, and yeah, I mean, one the thing that I've always said about Chrono Trigger, because some people say, which game do you like better, Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI? Um, and a lot of people, like my good friend Adam, he always said, well, Final Fantasy VI is the better game. Um, it has more characters, and it seems to be taking place on a grander scale. But one thing I always say is with Final Fantasy VI, it is a great game for sure, but playing it as a kid, I never really wanted to be in that world, like in that imaginary world of Final Fantasy VI. But when I played Chrono Trigger, I wished that I could be in that game. You know what I mean? Like I wish I could be one of those characters.
I agree with you, and I think that the the whole story in Final Fantasy VI about this war happening um, was interesting, but it didn't really tug on the heartstrings for me, at least, as much as like Chrono Trigger. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but there's one point in the game where I don't think this is a spoiler, but hey, it's an old game now, so if I'm spoiling something, I apologize, but it's too
Yeah,
bad.
it's too
Um,
bad.
there's one point where you're jumping through times, and during one of the times, you leave Robo at someone's house to do something. Does that sound correct?
In the second part of the game, right, when you're doing like the quest that you can do in any order, you leave him to plant seeds for a forest, right? Like he's tilling the land, and then
Right.
when you
And then
go
when
back
you,
into the future, the forest is has been grown. Is that what you're talking about?
I think so, but I thought he like stays somewhere at one point in time to help. Um, and it kind of, I like remember feeling bad, and that's when I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is such a good game that this stupid character that's a robot of all things, which you would think you don't relate to or you don't
Mhm.
have any connection with. Um, I felt bad that I was leaving him there, and I was like, is there any way around this? And there really wasn't, but nonetheless, it was interesting that it tugged on some heartstrings, so to speak.
Yes, and speaking of Robo and feeling bad for him, earlier in the game, do you remember the part where he gets beat up by that gang of robots, and they're playing the
Yeah,
sad music, and you try to help him, and he says, "No, these are my friends. Don't hurt them." As they're kicking the crap out of him,
yeah,
it's like that. That was another emotional part. I also remember the part where Luca's mother, you find out that she lost her legs in an accident, and you have that chance in the second half of the game to save to prevent that accident from happening. So that was another
yes,
cool thing. It has
and,
some,
and that
it's
was
like some
difficult.
sad and dramatic moments.
Oh, definitely, and that was difficult because I think in my game I screwed up and she lost her legs again. But then I looked on. I don't think like the internet was as prevalent at this point, but in some way I looked it up. Maybe I had the internet, and you had to input a code by using the buttons on your control pad, right? It was like LARA or wherever.
Yeah, because that
You
was
had
her
a,
name, I think. So you had to press L button ARA.
and that's pretty ingenious because who would think to spell it out with your buttons? You know what I mean? That's kind of weird.
Yeah, I thought her name was Select Start, so I got it wrong, but first time.
Yeah,
Uh,
or AAA is just like an AA meeting.
Down,
Um,
up, left. We're here all week,
yeah,
folks.
the Konami code. Um, I'm trying to think what else. It's been a very long time since I played the game. I don't know. There may have been like a 3DS rendition that came out later that I haven't played at. I didn't really have a 3DS or anything. I'm
They
sure it's
did,
on
yeah.
like
They
the
came out with a 3DS version, and I think they added some more gameplay to it. They added like sort of a side quest, which I confess I never really completed. It just felt a little bit weird because I know it wasn't part of the original game,
right.
so it just felt a little funny to me. But maybe sometime I'll pick that up and complete it.
So real quickly,
Did you like the?
I,
Go ahead.
I apologize. We I want to ask you a question, but I do have a question in the comments from Josh Taylor. Um, are we into the Telltale games at all? Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of Telltale. I played a little bit of the Borderlands one, and I beat another one that I can't recall. I tried the Walking Dead one. I tried the Wolf Among Us, and I'm not a, they're probably the closest thing that you'll get to like a Sega CD game where instead of it being full motion video that you're interacting with these scenes and then can change the outcome almost like a choose your adventure with limited interaction. So I do like them, but they're not my first choice of game. I feel like games have evolved so much now that I don't always want to go back to that type of game, but I love full motion video um, from Sega CD and 3DO and CDI and all that. So they're cool, but I haven't played a lot of them to judge too much. They're just not my first choice. How about you, Rich? Telltale games?
Never heard of Telltale games, unfortunately. But you're describing them as the games that are kind of like movies, Like, is it that you watch a video and then you have a chance to respond to what's to the
Yeah,
action?
it's not so much movies any longer. It used to be movies. Now it's more in-game cutscene type things, and then like it'll confront you with some kind of either shooting gallery or you have to pick an answer. Like someone will ask you something, you have different options to answer. It's almost like choose your own adventure. That's kind of the best way for me to put it. And then it progresses the story or the plot or whatever. There's a bunch. There's a Batman one, Borderlands, Walking Dead. They've done numerous ones, Minecraft, over the years. So you can check them out. But obviously, I guess Rich isn't that big of a fan because he hasn't heard of Telltale. It's the name of the company who makes these type of games.
Yeah, sorry, man. That's foreign to me.
Um, my friend Josh said Chrono Trigger is on the DS, and they added a mini dungeon that linked one of the endings from Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross.
Okay, so it helps to connect those two games and their storylines.
Yep. And someone up, Josh Taylor mentions that Game of Thrones had a Telltale game, and Smack X says they're pretty much point and click adventure games with quick time events thrown in, and that's a good way to put it. Um, Someone else says, "How do I get 100 subscribers?" Honestly, I don't know. I just talk to people like they're sitting with me on the couch, and I hope for the best.
So speaking of Chrono Cross, we can bring that up and maybe come back to Trigger in a bit. So you and I both played Chrono Cross, and we it underwhelmed us, right, to say the least.
To say the least, yeah.
Yeah. So Chrono Cross, when I found out that it was coming out, I think SquareSoft came out with that game and two other RPG games in the same year, because I remember seeing an ad in GamePro magazine. Again, had that subscription for a long time.
Me too.
So when I saw that they were making a sequel, it forced me to buy a non-Nintendo console for the first time because it was only coming out for PlayStation. Which, as a quick side note, I always hated how I loved how SquareSoft made all their games for the Super Nintendo, but then they stopped making games for Nintendo when Nintendo didn't want to switch over to CDs, the CD
Right,
format. I think that
right.
was the reason why they wanted to stick to cartridges for
Yep.
anti-piracy measures or something. And so I don't think any SquareSoft games came out for the N64. Um, and so I think that was a big blow to Nintendo, in my opinion. So anyway, Chrono Cross came out for the PlayStation, so they forced my hand. I went out and bought a Sony PlayStation, which was cool because I got to play Final Fantasy Tactics on that, which is one of my other favorite games of all time. So I got Chrono Cross, and the graphics are phenomenal.
Hmm.
The soundtrack is a beautiful soundtrack. I think that soundtrack is even a little bit better than the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, which I love. So I don't say that lightly. But the Chrono Cross gameplay didn't do much for me. Like they had some innovative things with the attack feature where you could do a combination attack. That was kind of cool. But they had that whole thing with the colors, like the elemental grid, and you have to like match up colors, and I just wasn't feeling it. And then the storyline, as I said in the previous video, our bad version, um, by the time I was about 80% into that game, I had really lost track of what was happening. There were just all these like twists and turns, and dragons being good and bad and good, and this character's a robot and that character's a whatever, and it was just this really overly complicated storyline.
Right.
And I really got to the point where like I don't care anymore. Like I'm going to finish the game because I'm not going to give up on the Chrono Trigger sequel. you know, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself at that time. But yeah, man, that storyline was just it was just crazy.
I
You
remember
know,
the music being really beautiful in a way. I think I personally still prefer Trigger just because that music can hit and I can get like a wave of nostalgia. Where with Cross, I can't at all. I don't even know if I'd remember it at this point, but I do remember it was nice at the time.
yeah,
Um, the gameplay I thought was like you pretty much read my mind in terms of the color thing. The story I felt was underwhelming. The connection to Trigger I felt was underwhelming, and it it overall was okay. But again, I pushed myself like you did to complete the game, even though I really wasn't that interested past a certain point.
yeah. And as I've heard some people say, maybe if it wasn't a sequel to Chrono Trigger, we would have liked it more. but because we were associating it with Chrono Trigger, it had big shoes to fill. So maybe
Right.
it had that against it. But yeah, the connections were bad, and apparently I might be getting this wrong. And if anybody watching knows that I'm wrong, please correct me. But the game suggests that Chrono and Marl get killed in a war. So it's like they become king and queen of I forget the name of their kingdom, but they become king and queen, and then like eventually Dalton, this one of the bad Trigger, raises an army and like he attacks Chrono and Marl's kingdom and kills them. And what pisses me off even more, Luca starts an orphanage and links the that feline guy who I think is a robot or whatever. So stupid. He he apparently sets Luca's orphanage on fire and kills her. And I'm like, okay, number one, my Luca would have kicked his ass because like she was super powered up with the prism helm and the dream gun and everything. Number one. Number two, it just felt like they were taking a dump on Chrono Trigger. Like you're killing off all of the characters that we loved. It just, I don't know, it didn't rub me the right way.
I just kept waiting for this tie-in. I'm playing the game like, all right, well, where is this tying in with Trigger? And as much as it did, it really didn't overall. So that just really disappointed me. So we have another question. Hey, Mike and Rich, since you guys like video game RPGs, I was wondering if you guys have ever played tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons and Shadowrun. And this question comes from Daniel Couch. I guess I'll go first. I I love Shadowrun. It's one of my favorite video game series on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, which made me go back and play the book version. Sadly, the people I had around me when I first got the book, the role playing game book, um, really weren't into it. I think I had like an ex girlfriend when I was younger who tried to play it with me, and she was like, "I don't get this. What the hell are we doing?" Um, and then I had a role playing group that I did play with, and I played Dungeons and Dragons a little bit, Shadowrun, Delta Green, which was some kind of like X Files ish campaign. And recently, I sold off some of my RPG books, like Paranoia, the Street Fighter books, and something else. But I've kept like the Vampire ones, Shadowrun. So I do have some left. I sold the Dungeons and Dragons books, but I don't go to the RPG shop any longer. It eventually closed down, and it's just hard to make time because you need like a massive amount of time to play with people and to just get together in general when you're an adult with work and stuff. I find it to be very crazy to do. So, Rich, how about you? You ever play any pen and paper RPGs?
I haven't. No, I never had a group of friends, like a group of nerdy friends that lived in
Yeah.
close proximity to me, where we were able to do that.
Hmm.
Which is unfortunate because I've seen it looks like it can be fun. I binge watched Stranger Things on Netflix, and they have a couple of scenes that show the kids playing their I think it's Dungeons and Dragons. So it looks like it could be a lot of fun. Um, One thing that I did for a while is I had a friend, Jim Norwood, and he, myself, and two other people, we played like sort of like a tabletop RPG game, but over the computer where we were IMing each other. We were part of like an AOL chat line, and he was the master where he came up with these scenarios, and that was pretty fun. We did that like for about 4 hours on a Saturday for 4 or 5 Saturdays in a row. So that was pretty cool. My custom character was basically a ripoff of Batman Beyond. You remember that? It was like the
Yeah.
teenage Batman in the future.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a total ripoff of him, like shooting the batarangs and everything. But he was effective.
But no,
But
that
yeah, that was pretty fun. I kind of wish that I did grow up with a small group of friends where we could have done stuff like that.
yeah. I mean, I think people do. It's just funny. You were pretty much playing a tabletop RPG through the internet, but um, people now. I mean, I've met friends online and stuff that all they do is go on forums and role play their characters and keep their stat sheets and do their math and stuff. That was the other thing with role playing games. The math. I'm not good at math at all, so the math which is funny because my job sort of involves math,
Me
um,
too.
but I don't like it. So when I have to start thinking very hard about, my stats and what's what and what I have to roll and percentages and then there's variables. I just go, you know what? This is too much work. So anytime I've played with friends, we dumb down the rules to like caveman rules because I am just not in the mood to start putting variables up for like I'm kneeling behind a boulder and I have a gun. Like, now since I'm kneeling, I have a 10% let. It's like, no, screw that. So in
Too
terms
much
of
work.
RPGs, I always dumb them down as well for tabletop games.
Yeah. Hey man, one other thing I want to say about Chrono Cross, and I know I'm really really dumping on the game, and again like
No.
there are some great things to say about the game, um, but if you remember in Chrono Trigger, there was just a small handful of characters, like there's like 5 or 6, if you count Magus, and I think the game did a good job of just working on that small handful of characters, and not all of them were developed really well. But the point was, you felt like they were yours, and you started to care about them. Chrono Cross had like, I don't know, like it was like 20 playable characters or more. There was like a whole bunch of potential characters you could use in your party, and I didn't care about any of them.
Yeah, me neither.
I think in part because there was just like too many of them, and I
Yeah.
think the first, so it's Surge and Kid, and then I think the first, the third character you encounter is this like French swordsman, a fencer with a blue hat, and he was like this fancy swordsman. He's like, "Oh, I'll join your party," and I remember thinking, "Well, this guy seems kind of lame, but okay, he's one of my guys." You know, but then you start acquiring more and more and more characters, and none of them really gets developed that much. And it's like I really don't give a crap about any of these people.
Well, I can't even remember any of their names, so you're a step beyond me because I don't remember anything from the game really. Just a little bit of the visuals in my head.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
So
You know.
yeah. So I have a question for you, but we have one more question in the chat. So I'll hit you with my question, and then I'll hit you with Josh Taylor's. So
Yeah.
my question is Earthbound, Chrono Trigger. You got to pick one. Which one?
For the longest time, I would have said Chrono Trigger. Like over the years, I would have given the nod to that because I think it's legitimately a better game in almost every category.
Yep.
But in recent, like over the last year or so, when I started playing Earthbound again on the virtual console, I find that I really, really do love that game. So if you're telling me like I have to pick one, I think right now I would pick Earthbound. But for
I,
most of my life, I would have said Chrono Trigger.
I would at this point, I think I would pick Chrono Trigger over Final Fantasy VI, which years ago I may have not said that. In terms of Earthbound and Chrono Trigger, I agree with you. I think gameplay wise and in terms of being like sort of grander in a way or more fleshed out, the attack system, everything, Chrono Trigger probably wins. In terms of like whimsy and fun and sort of, I don't know. I might say Earthbound. I think it may resonate a little bit more with me, but I haven't played them in years either. So if I went back, I'd have to go back and play them both now to kind of give you an honest answer. Um, the
Well, I like the way you
question,
put that though, like talking about fun and whimsy. Like Earthbound gets has the advantage in that department.
mhm. Yeah, my friend Josh Atticus MJ, he said he feels like Suikoden, since they had such a large cast, Chrono Cross was going for that, and I knew what he means. Actually, Suikoden is one of my favorite RPGs, like hands down. It is. I loved collecting all these 108 characters and building up your base, and each character had a different position in the base. Um, and there was like a main core group of guys, and they had this bond. I love Suikoden 1 and 2. They were amazing. Did you play Suikoden at all, Rich?
No, I've only heard of them. No,
Oh, they're
sorry.
they're really good. Um, the other
I'm
question we
disappointing
have.
your fans here. I know there's a lot of stuff I haven't done, a lot of
No,
stuff I
no.
haven't played.
There's a lot of stuff I haven't played either. So Josh Taylor asks, are there any games this year that you guys are looking forward to?
Uh, I mean, I just don't have a lot of time anymore, like to play games. I mean, I've been playing Breath of the Wild, as have millions of people. And that's something that I pick up, and when I just have like an hour or two to kill at home, I'll play that. I was really, really impressed by Breath of the Wild. I wouldn't call it one of my all-time favorite games because it's missing a little something. Maybe it's because the main storyline's not too intriguing. I don't know, but it's a fantastic game. So that's what I've been playing. Um, oh, there is one game that I will definitely buy whenever it comes out, and it's the sequel to Red Dead Redemption. I don't know when it's scheduled, but I know Rockstar. I think they've already started working on it. Red Dead Redemption. It's such a different game from Trigger and Earthbound, but that's up there, like among my all-time favorite games. So when that game comes out, as long as the reviews say that it's good, I'll probably buy whatever console I need to buy so I can play that.
Okay, well, now I mean, PS4s are what in the twos, I think, and then the Xbox One S, which is like the middle ground one. They had a deal recently for 140 bucks for an Xbox One S. The X is the high end 4K one that's 500 bucks, but you can get away with like 150, $160 and probably get a system at this point.
No, it's not bad at all.
No. In terms of games coming out, Cyberpunk 2077 looks cool because I'm a big Cyberpunk fan in general. As I said, I love Shadowrun. Even though I do like how they mix orcs and ogres in Shadowrun, where Cyberpunk, I don't think does that. I think it's more straight like Blade Runner, Johnny Mnemonic, which I love Johnny Mnemonic. I actually like Johnny Mnemonic more than Blade Runner, but don't tell anybody. Um, the Dark Souls remaster is interesting, but I just beat it on 360, the compatible version or whatever that is backwards compatible on the Xbox One. So I don't really have the urge to play it, and they're not using new assets, though it will run 4K 60 frames on the Xbox X. I don't have the X, so I'm intrigued, but not. It's probably not going to go buy it right away. We'll see.
Hey, let me ask you a question since we're already off the Chrono Trigger rails. I know you're really into horror
Yeah,
stuff, and have you seen the movie Candyman? And what do you think about that? Because that's one of my all-time favorite horror movies.
that is actually very weird timing because I said to Beth, my wife, last week, have you ever seen Candyman? And she goes, I think I've seen it. I'm pretty sure. And when she says that, it usually means she's mixing up with something else. So I have it on Blu-ray. I ordered a UK Blu-ray years ago that is region free, so it works in America. And I've always liked Candyman a lot. I was born and raised in the Bronx, so I have that like connection to the city a little bit. So it takes place in the city, even though it's the projects.
Yeah,
So it
Chicago,
reminds
Chicago,
me
the Cabrini Green projects.
Cabrini Green, yeah. So she said, "Oh, I wasn't sure," and then I saw a picture on Facebook, and I reposted it on Facebook of Candyman like 2 days ago. So
Yeah,
I
I
pulled the
saw the
Blu-
post. So
okay, so I
full
pulled the
disclosure.
Blu-ray out, and that night we watched Candyman, which I think was last night. I want to say Friday night. Um, and she liked it. She said it was slow, but she liked it. And yes, I Candyman's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a cool
Um,
movie, definitely.
Another one I want to ask about, and again, apologies to your viewers because again we're getting off track here, but want to get your opinion on Jeepers Creepers, the first one. I've told people that like the first half of Jeepers Creepers is a really really awesome horror movie. Um, that guy, chasing them in the truck, and you don't know what his deal is. And they have that scene where they have you seen the movie?
I did once. I don't remember it.
Okay. Well, it's interesting to me because the first half is really awesome. There's a scene where they're at this abandoned church and like the guy goes down a well and he finds these dead bodies and everything. And about like, halfway into the movie or so, you finally see the bad guy and you realize that the bad guy is this this monster with wings who can
Yeah.
fly.
Hmm.
And that just killed it for me. I'm not entirely sure why, but the first half of the movie, you figure, oh, this must be a human being, like some psychotic human being. And then when they reveal, oh, it's a flying bat monster, and it's like, it
Yeah,
kind of
and
lost something. So,
I know the new one came out recently. People were complaining because the creator, I guess, had gotten in trouble years and years ago for sleeping with someone who was younger than him she was underage, he wasn't, but their age difference wasn't that great, I think. Um, so he was considered a sex offender. So now people were like flipping out when the new movie was coming out. It's like uh, I'm not a Jeepers Creepers fan really, so I don't really put much clout into it.
Um, all right.
But
So yeah,
yeah, no,
Chrono Cross,
sorry.
man, what a disappointment.
Yeah, Chrono
Yeah.
Cross was a disappointment, especially when you play something so good as Trigger.
Yeah.
There was just even I remember at one point you go into oh, was it Magic Cant?
Well,
No,
that's an
that was
Earthbound Magic Hand.
what was that weird area in Chrono Trigger that was sort of like in space with aliens or something?
Um,
Some kind of creatures. They weren't human.
you talking about the prehistoric age with the lizard people?
No, that part was cool. There was another part though, I
Oh,
think.
you
Unless
talking
I'm
about
mixing.
the blue creatures, the blue round creatures, the new?
Yes,
Okay,
that's
yeah,
it.
that they're uh, during the Age of Magic. I think you can see them there.
Yeah.
I think they show
I,
up in
I
one or two other places too.
I thought that was so cool. When you go into like in that game, I felt like when I went to different places in time, it really felt very different. And I like that. I like the variation. Um, and like I said, some of the game just emotionally tugged on heartstrings. I know at one point I went up into that ship that's waiting for you in the Dark Ages or whatever that Magnus is on. Magnus.
Magus.
And there was a creepy vibe to that. I think that it's probably almost a perfect RPG, I would say, if you ask me. I think that
Yeah.
it encompasses pretty much everything you would ask for, and even the people that would complain maybe now about the graphics, they're still beautiful. They just are different than what we're used to now.
Yeah, the graphics for the time on the Super Nintendo really blew me away. The soundtrack, of course, did as well. I liked the combat system. I liked how you and one or two other characters could team up for a dual tech or a triple tech attack. You know, so that added like another layer of strategy to the fighting system. Um, I kind of liked how each character had a certain set of magic and they couldn't really deviate from that. Like Final Fantasy, it's cool how you could give all those espers to different characters, but at the same time, it felt kind of overwhelming at times. You
Mhm.
know, like I mean, you have to give everybody Ultima. I know that, right? Like that that you have to do in FF6. But um, yeah, I just liked how the Chrono Trigger characters each one had a unique weapon, a unique magic capability. Um, and like I said, the time travel was awesome. Did you have a favorite time period in the game?
I may, it, you know, there was so many. I can't remember the names at this point. There's so many areas in the game that I really like felt attached to, because you help people and you get kind of like bonds with them. I liked the area with the Millennial Fair. I liked
Yeah.
the music there and the sort of vibe of friendship, you know?
Yeah, that's probably my favorite era too. 1000 AD, it's like where you start out in the game with the fair and everything. Yeah, that's my favorite part. Um, just a lot of great atmospheric qualities too. Like when you go into the Guardia Forest, you know, and they play that music, and I guess if you haven't played it, it's hard for me to describe what it's like. But you know, I was just really impressed by that game. It at that time was the best game I'd ever played by far.
Wow,
You know,
that
and
says
still holds up
something.
to this day.
So speaking of best games, in the comment section, Josh Taylor is asking us, what is your
Is he
favorite?
the only guy watching this?
We have 9 viewers and 8 viewers now, probably because I just said 9. Um, what is your favorite NES game of all time? And I think I know mine. What's yours? Do you want me to
Uh,
go first? You need a minute?
yeah, you go first.
Um, I love Double Dragon, so I really love River City Ransom. I think that's probably my favorite on the Nintendo. I like how the characters are kind of deformed. The humor's there. Um, the game was very fun. As a kid, I remember my brother and I used to always get to this school or whatever, and the gate would be locked. And he would lie to me and say, "Oh, I beat it. You were at school. I beat the game while you were at school." He didn't. He was full of shit. Um, he always used to break my chops. He still does. So to get to the end of the game, you have to beat all the bosses in River City Ransom at each area, and then at the end the school is unlocked, and you go through the school and fight the final boss. I eventually did beat it on the Game Boy Advance, which was like an upgraded version with more mechanics to it, more role playing type mechanics with like I think upgradable stats and stuff and like abilities. Um, but River City Ransom is up there for me. It's just a great, fun beat 'em up. So, Rich, how about you? Any favorite Nintendo game?
Well, before I answer, when we did our first video, I had mentioned River City Ransom in passing as a game that didn't hold up to me when I played it recently compared to what I remember it being as a kid. I did love that game as a kid, and then I played it years later on the Virtual Console, and I felt like it didn't hold up. But not too long after we did that video, I played it again on the Virtual Console, and I beat it. And yeah, it's pretty fun. Like you said, you have to find all the bosses in these certain locations, and hit them over the head with pipes and bats and stuff. And
Yeah, yeah.
um, so that was a pretty fun game. My favorite NES game, dang, you know, I don't know that I have one, just because it wasn't really until the Super Nintendo that I really started playing a lot of games. My sister and I would play Bubble Bobble together, so um, that was a good one. But I never finished either of the Zelda games for Nintendo. I played the Mario games, so maybe Mario 3. I know there's something I'm forgetting, man. Once we stop filming, I'm probably going to remember an NES game that I loved. But the only thing that comes to mind right now, um, I would say, is Bubble Bobble, which is a pretty fun game.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually I don't know if I knew you had a sister. I don't know if I remember that.
Yeah, yeah, just one. Oh,
Oh, okay.
one sibling. So yeah, I'm going to say Bubble Bobble.
Okay. Let's see if we have any more questions here. All right, there's a couple people chiming in, so we'll see if anyone has anything else to say. Um, what was the side quest with the cat in Chrono Trigger at the fair?
Um, there's a girl who tells you that her cat is missing, and the cat's on the other side of the fair. So you just get the cat, and he follows you back to the girl, and she thanks you. And then later on in the game, uh, Chrono is on trial for allegedly kidnapping the princess. And if you did help out the girl, she appears as one of your character witnesses to say,
Right.
"Oh, you're a good guy. You helped me find my cat." That was another cool part of the game, is when you're in court,
I forgot about that.
and
Yep.
those decisions that you make early on in the game, play a factor during your trial. Whereas people say whether you're a good guy or a piece of crap. Like, there's a part where you can eat some food, and if you eat the food, then later on some guy shows up in court and says, "Oh, that guy ate my food. He's a thief." There's little things like that.
Yeah. Um, Anything else you wanted to add about games, role-playing games, Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross in general? Because I think I'm pretty good.
I think I'm good too. Yeah, I mean, unless anyone has any questions or comments, I can't really think of anything else at the moment. Just
My
people should definitely play it if they haven't yet. Like Earthbound, you can get it on the Virtual Console on the cheap, or on the 3DS.
I
So highly,
really,
highly recommend it.
I really wish they would have. Maybe they might do it now with the Switch. And you don't own a Switch, correct?
No, no, just have a
Okay.
Wii U.
Um, my friend Atticus MJ had said that there's this game called I Am Setsuna, and it's a like love letter to Chrono Trigger. It's on the computer, the PS4, and the Switch. Um, I don't think it's on the Wii U. I know it's not on the Xbox, but you should look up a review on that. You might dig it if you ever do decide to get a Switch or a PS4. Um, but someone else in the comment section asked me if I have any more funny GameStop stories, but I don't really think I have any, especially any that tie in with Chrono Trigger or anything. But I know
Those are
now.
some good videos you did.
Well, thank you. They got me some subscribers for some reason. I know now they sell retro stuff at GameStop again, and most of the time they're fake. I've had people tell me that they've bought retro video games from GameStop through their website or whatever, and they open the case and it's like a bootleg, or someone flashed a ROM onto a cartridge and then just put a shitty sticker on the front. So who knows? But yeah, nothing really GameStop wise, I would say lately, guys, since I haven't worked there in I don't know, 12 years or so.
Thankfully, right?
Yeah, thankfully. I mean, there's some good memories and stuff, but there's also, you eventually retail's retail.
Hey, let me
So
ask
yeah,
you,
if
man.
there's anything else
I got a question. Why do you tell me why you like Leatherface so much? Sorry, been
um,
drinking a little bit. Yeah, Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I think I've always liked Jason. I thought he was really cool. I never really gave Leatherface much of a chance when I was like a kid or a teen. As I got older now, just something about the animalistic, like he just freaks out kind of thing. I just think it's cool. I think, you know, Jason like hunts you down. Freddy's always been sort of silly in a way. Um, I like Michael Myers a lot because he's very calculated. He's very like straight. His mask is stupid. I don't like his mask, but overall, I like their demeanors and their the Leatherface demeanor. I always found the most human. Someone freaking out that's inbred or crazy, and it just seemed the most realistic in a sense.
Yeah,
So I kind of liked him. I thought he was funny, like when they make jokes about him online. The movie series, I think, is all over the place and wacky, and each Texas Chainsaw film almost doesn't even feel like a Texas Chainsaw film. Some of them do, and some of them just feel like off the wall, almost like comedy in a way, or dark comedies. Especially the Next Generation and the second film, especially. So I just find it to be a most similar to human type of horror icon, where everything else seems very abstract or um, supervillain esque.
yeah, and he doesn't have any super. He's not superhuman, right? Like the other guys are, Jason and them.
No, he's just a big retard. So that's the that's the best way for me to put it. He's like a big dumb inbred moron who freaks out and you know takes his aggressions out on people with a chainsaw. So
Yeah, just without
for,
the
for
witty one-liners like Freddy has.
yeah, Freddy's funny. I like Freddy. Um, yeah, I think that's about it, guys. There's really no more questions. So thank you guys for tuning back in after our initial hiccups. We
Yeah,
now
sorry
know
again.
that Rich has to film outside in his yard like a homeless person um, for it to work. So,
Apparently, yeah.
uh, any closing comments, Rich? Or you good?
I think I'm good for now, man. Chrono Trigger again, just a phenomenal game. There's probably so much more we could say about it, but I think for now I can't think of anything else.
I would agree
Um,
with Rich, and I would say we can't do it any justice. You should probably play it to really get the full effect.
yes, I agree with that.
So the next games we're going to cover on my channel are Custard's Last Stand and Beat 'em and Eat 'em. No, I'm just kidding. Those are porno games on the Atari.
That a video
So
game, beat him and eat him,
yep, it's a porno game. So thanks guys for
has a
watching.
mature rating.
Yeah, it will now. Thanks guys for watching. It's Vampire Mike from Sega CD Universe, along with my good buddy Arizona Rich. And
That's right.
tune in again next time. Be good, guys.